Okay, today's Q&A is Nikkur, and the question is pretty straightforward. What is it? What's Nikkur? So Nikkur, also known as trabering, is the process through which 4 types of items are removed from a carcass after the shechita, before the malicha, before the animal is salted. So before I get into some of those details, very briefly details, it is worth noting that there's a lot of different minhagim about what has to be removed, and what one community says you must absolutely take it out, another place might not touch at all. So each community should really follow the Messiah and do what's always been done as per their minhagim of their kehillah. Okay, so I mentioned there are going to be 4 types of items that have to be removed. 2 of them are, the first 2 I'm going to mention are the gid anasha, which is a bunch of nerves in the animal's hind legs, and certain fats, which are called chaylev, which are asr. Those are both asr midaraisa. The gid anasha, most of the chaylev that's asr midaraisa are in the back half of the animal, we call the hindquarters, and due to the tedious amount of work that it is to remove them, and the serious issue that would happen if a person would eat them, it's the common practice, at least in the United States, is to sell the entire hindquarters to people who don't keep kosher and sell them as non-kosher. There is some chaylev found in the 4 quarters of the animal, most of which is only asam d'Rabbanan, and that's one of the things that the manaker, the person doing the nikkur, or overseeing the nikkur, has to do, is to remove those fats that are considered chaylev or chaylev d'Rabbanan. Those fats are on or near the ribs, by the plate, which is like the pastrami in the inner skirt, the outer skirt, which is the diaphragm, the tarpesh, the hanging tendon, the liver, and the tail. A third type of item which has to be removed through nikkur are glands. There's one in the dekel, which is the brisket, or the hooves, the pcha, and they're removed because they're considered repulsive miyas. Not usher per se, but usher because we don't eat things that are disgusting. And the last is a whole bunch of large blood vessels where blood would collect and not be drawn out by the malicha. Malicha can't get the blood out of those vessels, and therefore those vessels need to be either cut so the blood will drain out, or removed completely. And the minig is that they are removed. Where are those blood vessels? They're in cheek, tongue, the chuck, the brisket, the shoulder, the forearm, ribs, and the plate area. So in a lot of different spots, and those have to either be cut or taken out in order to make sure there is no collection of blood sitting someplace that the malicha couldn't get to. There's lots of svarim have been written on the topic of nikkur, but the Ramah says that the art of nikkur does much better by hands-on instruction rather than reading it out of a book, which is in fact, of course, true. Doesn't need my haskama, of course, true. It's very much a look at the piece of meat and touch it and know what has to be taken out. It requires butchering skills so that the meat still is usable and presentable afterwards. It doesn't get all cut up, and you have to also, of course, know what does and doesn't have to be removed. Nowadays, most of the nikkur is done at the slaughterhouse by the slaughterhouse's own staff, under the direction and the oversight of a Rav Machshir and a Manaker who are taking responsibility to make sure it's done correctly. Now, in this regard, the Torah groups animals into 3 groups: behemoths, chayas, and oifas. Behemoths is roughly translated as domesticated species. That's a rough translation. Chayas are the, so to speak, non-domesticated species, and oifas means birds. So what I mentioned until now is true for behemoths, which includes cows, sheep, and goats. Those are the behemoths. Those are the 3 groups of behemoths. But there is no isser of chaylev for chayas, like a deer, which makes their nikkur much easier, since there's no isser to eat the chaylev that's there. For oifos, that's birds, like chicken, turkey, duck, chaylev and gid anasha are both permitted. So you can eat in those completely. And as far as blood vessels, the blood, taking blood out, the Shulchan Aruch says that when the Gemara says that the vessels in the hand have to be cut or removed, those are for blood reasons, that refers both to the forearm of an animal, that's a hand, and the wing of a bird is as if it's sort of like the bird's hand. Ramah says it's not true, it's only for the animals, it doesn't apply to oifos. But even so, the mini is to cut off the wing tip, the tip of the wing, as a fulfillment of the mechaber's position, because this way, if you cut it off, you've cut the vessel and the blood can drain out over there. Okay, separately, just mentioning, not so related to nikkur per se, is you have to take out all the internal organs from a bird before you do malicha. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat again that there are many different hagam about nikkur, and kehillah should follow their Messiah of what should be done.